6, 7, 8. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the January 25th, 2022 Ottawa County School Board meeting, Board of Trustees meeting to order. Sarah, can you read the line acknowledgement, please?
Yes. As we gather virtually today from all across the Ottawa region, we acknowledge that we and the Ottawa Catholic School Board are located on the traditional and ancestral territory of the Algonquin people. We recognize their long-standing relationship with this land, which remains unceded. We pay respect to all Indigenous people in this region from all nations across Canada who call Ottawa home.
Thank you. Father Peter?
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Faithful God, your love for us surpasses all our hopes and desires. We thank you for your constant presence and goodness in our lives. We are grateful for our time together today, and we beg you to bless the work of our hands in the service of your children through the ministry of Catholic education. May we be wise stewards of the gift of Catholic education entrusted to us. May all our efforts be guided by you, bring glory to your name, and find their completion in you. Bless each of us so that we may be living signs of your love for all. And we ask you this through Christ our Lord.
Amen.
And please keep in your prayers the following people who have passed away recently: the victims of the horrific explosion at Eastway Tank Limited, their families, and those emergency personnel involved in the rescue operation. And we also pray for our staff and students' extended family members, especially those who have lost their lives due to COVID-19. Eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. The saint we are featuring tonight is the saint after whom our virtual high school is named, Sister Josephine Bakita. It may be a bit longer than usual today, but February is Black History Month. Josephine Bakita was born in 1869 in the village of Oxta in Sudan. And her father was a prosperous and respected person and was the brother of the village chief. She had 6 siblings. I lived a very happy and carefree life without knowing what suffering was. This did not last long. When she was 7 years old, she was seized by Arab slave traders. She was forced to walk barefoot for 960 kilometers to El Obeid and was sold and bought twice before she arrived there. Over the course of the next 12 years, she was sold or given 6 more times, and then she finally was given her freedom. She endured harsh slavery from the age of 7 to 13. Because of the trauma of her abduction, she forgot her name and was given the name Bakita by one of the slavers, which means lucky or fortunate. She was forcibly converted to Islam. In El Obeid, she was bought by a rich Arab who used her as a maid for his 2 daughters. Her 4th owner was a Turkish general, and she had to serve his mother-in-law and his wife, who were cruel to their slaves. She said afterwards, "During all the years I stayed at that house, I do not recall a day that passed without some wound or other. And when a wound from the whip began to heal, other blows would pour down upon me. She says, but the most terrifying of all her memories was when she, along with other slaves, was marked by a process resembling scarification and tattooing, which was a traditional practice throughout Sudan. As her mistress was watching her with a whip in her hand, a dish of white flour, a dish of salt, and a razor were brought by a woman. She used the flour to draw patterns on her skin, and then she cut deeply along the lines before filling it with salt to ensure permanent scarring. A total of 114 intricate patterns were cut on her breasts, belly, and right arm. By the end of 1882, El Obeid came under threat of an attack by Mahdist revolutionaries. The Turkish general began to make preparations to return to his homeland and sold his slaves. Her journey to freedom began in 1883 when Bakita was 13. She was bought in Khartoum by an Italian vice consul, Callisto Legnani, who showed her kindness and treated her with dignity. After 2 years, he had to return to Italy, and Bakita asked to go with him. At the end of 1884, she escaped the turmoil with a friend, Augusto Michaeli. They traveled a risky 650 kilometers on camelback to Sowakin, the largest port of Sudan. In March 1885, they left Suwaki for Italy and arrived at the port of Genoa and were met by Michaeli's wife, Maria Torina Michaeli, to whom Legnani, the consul, gave ownership of Bakita. When the Michaelis went to Sudan, they left their daughter and Bakita in the care of the Canossian sisters in Venice. There she was cared for and instructed by the sisters. Bakita encountered Christianity for the first time. At the age of 19, when the Michaelis wanted to take her back to Sudan, she refused and wanted to stay with the sisters. The British government had outlawed slavery in Sudan before her birth, so she was never legally a slave, and she was free. Due to legal wrangling, she became acquainted with Archbishop Giuseppe Sarti, the Cardinal Patriarch of Venice, and later Pope Pius X. He baptized and confirmed her. She entered the novitiate of the Canossian sisters and became a member of the community. She visited many of her communities and helped to prepare young sisters for work in Africa. A strong missionary drive animated her throughout her entire life. Her mind was always on God and her heart in Africa. She stayed in the convent of Schio for 42 years as cook, sacristan, and portress. She became known in the area for her sanctity. Her last years were marked by pain and sickness, and she passed away on February 8, 1947, at the age of 77. Her feast day is February 8th, the day she died. She was declared venerable by Pope John XXIII, and on October 1st, 2000, declared a saint. She is venerated as a modern African saint and as a statement against the brutal history of slavery. She has been adopted as the patron saint of Sudan and human trafficking survivors. And as St. Josephine Bakita School is new, and they are still establishing their traditions, the first of which is the school logo, using the design of St. Josephine Bakita hairpiece. They incorporated stylized figures of students around the cross. The cross that was at the center of St. Josephine's new life and the center of our faith and a sign of God's merciful love. This has been a collaborative effort of all members of the community. The school community has worked closely with Father Pierre and the pastoral team to celebrate our faith throughout the liturgical year and to provide pastoral care. He has also visited virtual classes to support the teachers and students. With the support of the school council, St. Josephine ran a Christmas collection this year to help the needy families in their community. They were able to help 13 families experience the joy of Christmas. And this year, they're also looking forward to celebrating Black History Month. The BHM Committee and the Black Student Association are planning many engaging activities throughout the month. And I will close this presentation with an exhortation from St. Josephine, who experienced the love of God and desired to share it with others. The world has loved us so much, or the Lord has loved us so much, we must love one another. We must be compassionate. That's it, Mark.
Thank you very much, Father, for your presentation. Will now please rise for O Canada. Item C, we have no delegations. Public session, we have no one. Approval of the agenda. Can I get a mover, please? Trustee Coburn, seconded by Trustee McEwen. That the agenda for the regular board meeting of January 25th, 2022 be approved as presented. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item S, school student departmental profiles. We have a memo from the Associate Director of Education, read the student trustees mid-year presentation to the board. Welcome, Associate Director Mrs. Donnie and welcome student trustees Sarah and Ben.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Usually when we're bringing a presentation forward, I would give a lengthy introduction to our presenters, but I'm happy to say that you all know our two student trustees, so I do not have to introduce them. Sarah and Ben are here this evening as part of the board meeting to present what we call their mid-year presentation on being student trustees. And if I could just add a personal note, I've gotten to know the two of them a little bit, and I must say they have completely different yet complementary leadership styles, and it's been so lovely to work with them. They run an excellent student senate meeting, and I will turn it over without any further ado to both Ben and Sarah to update the Board of Trustees on their work this year.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ms. Donahue. It's very much appreciated. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for inviting Ben and I to share the progress that we as student trustees and our board student senate have made over the past 5 months. The first half of the school year as student trustees has provided Ben and I with a multitude of opportunities and role models from which we have been able to learn invaluable skills as compassionate student leaders. Though our chance to meet in person with the many members of the education community has been significantly reduced, we feel strongly that our sense of togetherness has remained in solid foundation as we continue to be blessed with the opportunities to meet new people, celebrate the impact we can make, and grow together. Next slide, please. Some of the most memorable occasions we were able to participate in include the Back to School welcome video, our first Safe Schools Committee meeting, the Christmas cheer breakfast, and the CEFO AGM. Through just these few opportunities, we have been able to build relationships with those who can help us inspire change, to see our education system through different lenses, and to amplify the voice of the voiceless. We are incredibly grateful to have been welcomed by some of the kindest and most supportive members of the board community as we continue to pursue student perspectives and challenges different from our own, allowing us to expand our awareness of education issues affecting youth today. These moments have allowed us to ask important questions around who it is that educational decisions affect the most and how that should affect our work. Next slide, please. One very special event that I was honored to attend virtually this month was the Oxta Virtual Catholic Trustee Seminar. The seminar invited school board trustees and directors from across Ontario to celebrate and learn about Catholic education. Guest speaker Bishop Burgee shared a profound message on following children as a model of our faith and viewing our common position as student advocates as a gift to serve God rather than as a liability. Board trustees Judy Wawia and Judy Manitowabi shared their extraordinary stories of challenge as Indigenous people and trustees in Canada and provided invaluable and practical insight on how we can initiate change for equitable opportunity for Indigenous students and staff. Another highlight of the day was the Student Trustees Workshop, where I had the chance to meet with other student trustees of Ontario school boards and network with a group of brilliant minds. It was such a unique experience to share the ideas, obstacles, and questions that I have come across as a student trustee with those who share my position, and of course, vice versa. We gained a deeper understanding of how to organize an efficient form of communication between ourselves and the student body, how to adapt to a virtual professional environment, and how to be a source of support and encouragement to our student senate. Next slide, please. In December, we had our first student senate meeting of the school year, where we were met with the most gifted, diligent, and creative group of student leaders. During this meeting, we focused on getting to know one another and establishing relationships in which we can all help and support each other. We did this through a few team building activities, trivias, breakout sessions, and feedback Google Forms. We also spent some time talking with representatives of 2 school-based nonprofit organizations, Ontario Students Against Impaired Driving and Relay for Life. A major struggle that almost all student councils encountered last year was the lack of student participation in their initiatives because of the many restrictions that COVID has set in our schools. When we asked this year's co-presidents what their goal was for this year, an overwhelming majority share their desire to see school spirit and involvement as it once was in pre-pandemic years. After learning about these nonprofit initiatives, we as a student senate are excited to bring these back to our schools to rebuild a sense of school fellowship while serving the greater community for God. Additionally, we put our minds together as a group to brainstorm and plan for a thrilling student senate initiative, which is the OCSB's first Battle of the Schools, and we'll talk about that some more later on in the presentation. Next slide, please. In early January, the Student Senate met again and engaged in several group dialogues, as well as heard from the OCSB's Leading and Learning Department. We were honored to have the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Advisor, Dr. Prince Ahoro, join our meeting to inform us of several of the board's inclusion initiatives in our schools and establishments. There was an abundance of productive discussion where we were able to acquire knowledge of how we, as students, can reflect on the impact of our work on our schools and actively seek the input and engagement of marginalized students. At the same time, we celebrated the incredible initiatives for equity that our student councils have implemented for themselves in their schools, such as student equity advisors sitting on their councils, special needs student councils, and collaborations with affinity groups. Another great portion of our meeting was centered around small group idea bouncing for COVID-safe student council projects and past successes and failures. Each co-president shared such inspiring and creative projects that they spearheaded, like virtual fashion shows, collaborative cultural cookbooks, walking art galleries, and homeroom championships. And finally, with the guidance of last year's student trustees, Patrick and Nyamir, this year's Student Senate is very pleased to continue the Students of OCSB initiative. Students of OCSB, which we are beginning next week, highlights the talent and influence of the diverse students in our board with a focus on those who exude the Catholic graduate expectations and deep learning competencies. Next slide, please.
After a year of social distancing, school closures, and lack of school activities, school spirit was extremely low. Sarah and I, with the exceptional leadership of the St. Mark's co-president, Callie McNeil and Carlin Rofi, who took major leadership roles in running the events, held the first ever board-wide Spirit Week. Battle of the School is a school-wide competition where the school which maintains the highest level of participation per population during the Spirit Week wins. Battle of the Schools provided a unique opportunity to reintegrate school spirit by having 12 OCSB high school compete throughout the Christmas Spirit Weeks to determine which school will be the winner. The friendly banter and competitions between schools helped generate some much-needed excitement and school spirit for the student body. We're proud to announce that the winner of the first ever OCSB Battle of the Schools are the Notre Dame's Eagles. Next slide, please. Thanks to Superintendent Kelly and Mr. Mario Franker, we were given the opportunity to participate in the selection process of the OYA construction project. We were able to provide a student perspective to the decision-making process and learn about the different aspects that have to be taken into consideration when deciding on the construction project, such as the project's feasibility and environmental restrictions. The former student of St. Francis Xavier will have the honor of having the building they designed in a former school project a couple years ago being built. Congratulations. Next slide, please. Through our tenure as student trustees, up to date, we have had the chance to learn a lot halfway through this journey. We learned the importance of a student senate, as it gives the students a chance to give their input on topics and have the direct impact on topics that have direct impacts on their educations, such as budgets. Furthermore, the Student Senate taught us the importance of collaboration, as it serves as a tool to keep every school on the board connected as they share ideas. Additionally, we're able to learn about the numerous opportunities for students to get involved within our board and gain experiences. Some of these opportunities include the chance of the Student Senate to join a central committee, or opportunities given to the students at our various schools, such as the OYA construction project.
Another major practical skill that Ben and I are adopting as student trustees is to effectively plan and execute meetings and projects while allowing ourselves to make mistakes along the way and learning from them going forward. Seeking the guidance of our superiors and the input of the Senate as we plan the future is fundamental to ensuring that we are serving others with care and understanding. Additionally, there have been moments this year where, in the days ahead of us, all we can see are assignments, tests, deadlines, meetings, conferences, and commitments, which can be overwhelming. But one thing that we know as Christians is that we do not walk by sight, but by faith. And so, learning to trust that God always makes a way and will deliver through each of us has been key.
Next slide, please. Looking to the future, our future goals as student trustees as we step into the latter half of the year are first with the student trustee elections coming up. Sarah and I have a goal of increasing the publicity around the role of student trustee and the upcoming election through social media and advertisement from the various student council. With this increased advertisement on the position, we hope to entice a variety of students to run for the position. Next, we are planning on celebrating students' accomplishments in our various schools through OCSB Student. where, as previously mentioned, a student will be highlighted on social media for their accomplishments. Finally, we hope to improve the communications between the student body and the student trustees in order to broaden the student body's needs and give the students a place to voice their concerns. In other words, amplify the voice of the voiceless. One of the steps we have taken towards this is by tripling the follower count on the OCSB students account during our tenure, as it provides a medium by which the students could voice their concerns to us, student trustee, directly, so we could better represent their needs and desires. Next slide, please. We would like to take this moment to say thank you to Mr. D'Amico, Ms. Donaghy, Ms. McBride, Ms. Vincent, Ms. Rodriguez, the Student Senate, the Board of Trustees, our school communities, for your continuous support, encouragement, and faith in us, as none of this would be possible today without you guys, and we would like to express our sincere gratitude. Thanks.
So, Mr. Chair, I have learned that there is no reason for me to speak on behalf of the students. They do that beautifully themselves, but I know that they and myself would be happy to answer any questions the trustees may have. Thank you, Ben and Sarah.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments? Trustee Whittaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, through you. And first of all, thank you to their student trustees. A great presentation. It's hard to believe that you've jammed so much activity virtually, albeit, into half the year already. So congratulations on that work. And not surprising to see Notre Dame coming out on top. So I'm very pleased to see that. But just I'm glad that you've raised the increased publicity around advertising the role for student trustees. Can you talk a little bit about, some of the things that you plan to do around publicizing it, as well as have you had a lot of inquiries of folks in the Student Senate, maybe at a more junior level, who are interested in, next year coming in and asking you questions about the role?
Definitely. Through you, Mr. Chair, I can partly answer that question. Ben and I have just noticed through our experience of running for a student trustee that within our schools, the role of student trustee is mainly sort of announced to students who already engage in like student leadership initiatives, activities, who are very popular in their student councils or even among the students. And while that is great, and while having great leadership skills is incredibly important for the role of student trustee, we also know that there is a great population of the students that isn't being reached. And there's so much talent within the students that may not always be at the top of those activities that can contribute so much to the role of student trustee. And so that's why we really want to raise awareness on what the role entails. One thing that we're hoping to encourage all staff and student councils to do during this year's election is to invite all students in high school, well, grade 10 to 12, who meet the specific requirements to try out for the student trustee within their own school, rather than having teachers going out and selecting the students that they believe would best represent their school or best be a candidate. We really just encourage them to open that opportunity to all students and then have a mini election within their own schools, so that each student has a chance to at least attempt to run for the role.
Thank you. Just a quick supplemental, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Just wondering, Sarah and Ben, if you've had an opportunity to do any networking. I'm glad that you were able to attend the virtual OCSDA conference. Have you had a chance to attend any virtual conferences with your Provincial Student Trustee Association, Oxta ACO?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I had the opportunity to attend the Oxta ACO conference before, I think, the summer heading into this year. And through them, we were able to network with the numerous trustees from all across the province. And it was a great opportunity in order to learn a lot from the student trustees that were already there and had the experience. It was a great role as to help us kind of step in transition into the step of trustee, as they were giving us advice. And some of the advice we're able to get is to not be scared and not fear the position, as we were chosen, and it's our responsibility to lead us to represent our student voice the best. And it's kind of like fighting the imposter syndrome. As being a student in a room full of amazing adults, you kind of feel like you don't belong there, which is kind of the advice we got from the Oxta ACO, where it's kind of like trying to fight it that you belong to be there, and it's your job to represent the student body, and you have to voice concern the student body brings and not to be scared. So that's just kind of the examples of what we're able to learn through the Oxta ACO and different conferences we learned, and which is thankful to the board for giving us the opportunity to attend such wonderful conferences, as was a great help as transitioning into student Trustees.
I
Great,
think
thank
Thank
you.
you,
we're-
Mr. Chair. If I could also add to that, there is another OCSB conference that I think that and I are planning to attend in a few weeks. So that'll be another opportunity for us to engage with other student trustees. And like I mentioned as well in the presentation at the Oxta seminar, I was able to meet with a lot of others, past and previous, and it was a great opportunity for me to learn more about the role.
Trustee Simpson.
I want to thank you very much for your presentation. It was so professionally done. I'm so impressed. Also, it gave us great insight into the work that you do behind the scenes. We see you at these board meetings, and we don't always know what goes on behind the scenes with our student leaders. I love your phrase, amplify the voice of the voiceless. I was wondering what plans you have in the last part of your term as trustees to help bring this to fruition.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, if I could answer that first part. So social media has been a really great help with us. I think creating a means of communication, as we mentioned, is a really important tool for us to understand, firstly, what it is that marginalized students are asking for, they need, and have their opinions around. So using social media is something that Ben and I are continuing to learn about. The effective ways that we can use that to reach out to students, to inform them of the decisions that the boards are making or topics that the board is discussing, and then asking for what their input is. And of course, using the student councils or reaching out to the student councils and encouraging them to reach out to their student population as well is incredibly important. And we have an incredibly gifted team of student council presidents and a really strong form of communication between us and them. And we've heard so much already back from them, which we have brought up at student senate meetings, and then of course with the associate director. So yeah.
Great, thank you.
Trustee Armstrong.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I guess either trustee could handle this one. What can we do more as a board to ensure our students are resilient?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I guess I could answer this one too. I think something that's really important is providing sort of a way for students to speak up for themselves. Because I think sometimes we can get really caught up, I mean, Ben and I included, in what we think students need and what students want, what students' opinions are on important matters. But giving students the opportunity to share their ideas and to be questioned on their ideas, on their opinions is really important because it builds character, of course, which is what we hope our students will build. But it's also a really great way for them to learn, strong leadership skills for themselves, communication skills, and critical thinking skills to communicate how they feel. And it also just provides us a much better opportunity to know what students need and what students want directly from themselves. I hope that answers your question.
Is there any other questions or comments? Thank you very much, Sarah and Ben. Great presentation. Good answers. Thinking on your feet. Look forward to your final presentation. You got a few months to relax and then you're back up on the pulpit. Can I have a mover, please, to receive the student trustees report? Trustee McEwen and Trustee Moore. That the student trustees report be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item G, declarations of conflict of interest. Seeing none. Confirmation of the minutes of the regular board meeting of January 11, 2022. Can I have a mover, please? Trustee Whitted. Seconder. Trustee Moore. That the minutes of the regular board meeting of January 11, 2022 be adopted as presented. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. There's no unfinished business from previous meetings. There's no trustee motions. Presentation and consideration of committee reports. Committee of the Whole, January 25th, 2022. Mr. Vice Chair, do you have anything coming forward?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two items, and please indulge me, they're a little bit lengthy. First item is a memo from the Superintendent of Human Resources regarding principal and vice principal terms and conditions. And it reads as follows: that the memorandum from the Superintendent of Human Resources dated January 19, 2022, entitled Principal, Vice Principal Terms and Conditions be received, and that the Ottawa Catholic School Board approve the central terms and conditions of employment contained within the memorandum of the settlement and attached appendices dated December 14, 2021, made between the Principals and Vice Principals Association, comprised of Association des Directions et Directions Adjointes des Écoles Franco-Ontariennes, the Catholic Principals Council of Ontario, and the Ontario Principals Council, and the l'Association des Conseillers Scolaires des Écoles Publiques de l'Ontario, l'Association Franco-Ontarienne des Conseillers Scolaires Catholiques, the Ontario Catholic School Trustees Association, and the Ontario Public School Boards Association, and agreed to by the Crown. Further, that the approval of the motion of the central terms be reported to the Ontario Catholic School Trustees Association.
And that was moved
by Trustee McEwen and seconded by Trustee Lawrence.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
The second item, Mr. Chair, is a memo from the Superintendent of Student Success Elementary and the Superintendent of Finance and Administration regarding the Child Care Review Update, January 2022, moved by Trustee Coburn, seconded by Trustee Simpson, that the memo from the Superintendent of Elementary Student Success and the Superintendent of Finance and Administration dated January 18th, 2022, entitled Child Care Review Update, January 2022, be received, and that the board directs staff to consult with the Child Care Corporation to determine interest and feasibility of moving forward with the recommended option and report back for further direction.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item 2, memo from the Superintendent of Special Education and Student Services, Special Education Advisory Committee minutes of November 17, 2021 and December 15, 2021. Superintendent Benton, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. To be received.
Thank you. Do you have a mover for the minutes, please? Trustee Armstrong, I'm just going to ask, were you in attendance to these meetings? Maybe someone in attendance to the meetings could move. Trustee Moore? And seconded by Trustee Armstrong. That the memorandum of the Superintendent of Special Education and Student Services dated January 18, 2022, entitled Special Education Advisory Committee minutes November 17, 2021 and December 15, 2021 be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item L1, presentation and consideration of staff trustee reports. Memo from the Superintendent of Student Success, Leading and Learning Graduation Coach Program for Black Students. Welcome, Superintendent Keeley and Dr. Ahurl. Sorry.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I am pleased to be able to share with you this evening a presentation about our Grad Coach for Black Students. This program began last year and currently involves 3 of our secondary schools, St. Pat's, Lester B. Pearson, and Notre Dame. The Grad Coach for Black Students works collaboratively with staff, community, and parents. They provide culturally responsive support to Black students to improve their well-being and academic achievement, with the goal of increasing graduation rates and supporting postgraduate plans. I am pleased to have our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Advisor, Dr. Ahurl, with us this evening to lead the presentation. Dr. Ahurl?
Thank you, Superintendent Kelly. Good evening, Mr. Chair, our Board of Trustees, senior executives, and every member of the public. It gives me great pleasure to share with you an update on the Black Student Graduation Program. Please advance slide. The graduation coach role, the graduation coach program is a ministry mandated and funded position to support and guide Black students on the road to graduation. So grad coaches partner with the core team at schools whose makeup may include the guidance counselor, attendance support counselor, VPs, principals, and other administrative staff to mentor, advocate, and provide culturally relevant supports to students, their families, and community members. For instance, last year, Though it was in the middle of a pandemic, activities performed virtually by the grad coach at St. Pat's, working with the core team, included engaging students at St. Pat's, engaging students of St. Pat's in creative activities towards Black History Month through different mediums, e.g. Podcasting and video making, providing opportunities for 47 students to participate in monthly online community sessions that advocates for Black students' mental health through a program called Talk and Listen, providing guidance to BSAs in implementing their mandate and action planning. Please advance slide. So why the Black students? I know people will be asking, why Black students? Why Black students? StatsCan Census 2016 and the TDSB data has shown that compared to their peers, Black students have a drop out rate almost twice of their white peers, while the graduation rates of Black students is 15% points below that of their white peers. Many youths are first generation and their parents do not go through Canadian schooling system, which causes gaps. You can imagine some of the bewilderment faced by these parents that do not understand the Canadian schooling system. The professional layout of many schools does not match that of the student population, so Black students feel underrepresented and do not have access to positive role models in the school system. I remember talking to some of the Black students, some of them, they don't have teachers that are even Black that they could really speak to, especially when you start going to the suburban schools. Racism, misogyny, and xenophobia continue to be prevalent in our society. And we need to address these issues by working together, every one of us. Next slide, please. So what high schools do we support? While we would love to have grad coaches at every school, we only have ministry funding for one graduation coach, and that's Marissa Dahlia Ellis, who is currently supporting St. Pat's High School and Lester B. Pearson. We are so appreciative of the innovative thinking of Notre Dame principal Jean-Paul Claudia, who has partnered with the board to hire another graduation coach part-time using the Urban Priority High School funding. Hence, the second grad coach, Sham Francois, who started in December supporting Notre Dame High School students to improve their academic achievement. The next slide, please. Despite the COVID restrictions, 30 students participated in the 2021 summer program. Feedback received from students were very honest, and they enjoyed all of the programs, especially the workshops like video editing and coding. The summer program allowed us connect with their parents, guidance, and caregivers who said that they found the program active, that the program actively engaged their kids in a positive manner. We were able to invite Black students in grade 7 and 8 from the feeder schools to participate in these programs. The grad coach have also been working to establish and support the BSAs in the various schools and continue to provide support to the BSF. Last year, Marissa Dahlia Ellis did the keynote speak at the OCSB Black Students Forum on November 18, 2021, which was attended by over 86 students and supported by mental health and social workers, including the Black Educators Network. The grad coaches also continue to partner with different community organizations, e.g. the Black Education Network, Algonquin College, ACMP at Carleton University to support our students. They are working with struggling Black students to create a graduation passing class plan, which provides daily suggestions on how to improve academic suggestions. The next slide, please. The program continues to empower, engage, and give students a better sense of belonging. Our partnership with parents means that they are involved in their child's academic success. The impact of graduation program is captured in this quote shared with the Ministry of Education by one of the grad coaches after observing the interaction and analyzing the feedback from some of the programs last year. I open quote, it says, the most successful / good practices were meeting with students online for games and discussion on topics they wanted to talk about. I found out that students responded tremendously well when they are given the opportunity to shine, to voice whatever their heart desire. You know, they come and play and enjoy each other's company, where they may not have met in person naturally, and found out that they liked each other's individualism. I also found out that having someone from the Black community to talk about mental health gave the students courage and knowledge of themselves. Students want a staff to look at them and listen to them. Please, can we advance to the next slide? So what's being said? The feedback so far from principals and students that have these programs in their schools have been very positive. I remember attending the recent Black Students Advisory Council hosted by Director Memo in one of his the breakout groups that I joined. You could see the glimmer, like honestly, you could see the glimmer of light in the eyes of the student from Notre Dame as she shared the cool programs and the support they were receiving from their grad coach, and the excitement of her group about the upcoming Black History Month. Feedback from principals across Ontario state that there is no doubt indeed that coaches are caring adults who offer culturally responsive intervention and individualized approaches to program delivery for Black students. The need is great in our schools, but I'm glad that I am seeing an increasing commitment by principals across our board to support not just Black students, but Indigenous, racialized, children with exceptionalities. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Dr. O'Hara. Trustees, comments or questions? Trustee Moore.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Dr. O'Hara, it's wonderful to see you again. I don't think we've seen you since you were first hired. Circumstances have kept you from us.
Yes, I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much.
It's good to see you. I had a question. I guess in special ed, sort of a lens to this one. And I'm in the West End, and I really want Black graduation coaches out in the West End. We got some awesome communities out here that, just need that little punch, right? So I'm looking at it, gifted students. And gifted students, if they're not identified and given appropriate programming, are dropouts often, because they're not challenged at school, they're not accepted at school, they feel disconnected with school. And do you find that when you're looking at these students in St. Paul's and Notre Dame, they win awards at Notre Dame and Lester B, that there's a proportionate amount of students who are identified as gifted, and students, a proportionate amount of students who should have IEPs have IEPs?
To you, Ms. Chair, I would say, and it's a good question. I would say that with students, generally, whether they are gifted, they have IEP, I think that the challenge is very similar across schools, especially when it has to do with Black students. They face that layer of racism that they have to deal with. Then when there is a disability added to that, or when there is when there is that additional layer of intersection added to that, it could even create further challenges. And so, yes, I would say yes. You want to kind of we want to make sure that students are supported. We want to make sure that we create that opportunity to see what can we do differently with these students. How can we support them and not just lump them as a whole? What can we do as schools to basically focus our support to help them? And I think this is there's a great opportunity for the various programs to work together, and that's why, like, personally, I love working with. I find myself doing lots of consultations in terms of the work I do, working with whether it be special ed, working with the mental health lead, working with different groups, because that's how it's going to work. I think we need to kind of approach every solution that has to do with every student with a multiple pronged approach. That way, we can make sure that the solutions we provide, they are very robust, and that they are actually supporting our students in the appropriate way.
Thank you. May I ask a follow-up, Mr. Chair?
There's a question this time, is it? Go ahead.
Well, it is. was sort of trying to be a question, not just, I'm just not trying to beat on, Notre Dame because they win stuff and we don't. But
Go ahead, Trustee Moore.
Actually, it's a question about cultural intelligence, and I find it annoying sometimes when people say, "Well, it's Black culture," but Black people come from around the world. It's a global culture. It's a global majority, and how do you find the cultural intelligence, and how do you work on that?
Yeah, to you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you. That's a great question. Cultural intelligence, when I hear the word cultural intelligence, for me, it just speaks to me about being sensitive or the level of intelligence you have to navigate cultures appropriately. And for me, that would be cultural intelligence. If for instance, I come across an Indigenous person and I'm able to work with that Indigenous student, support that Indigenous student, be able to cater to their unique needs, I am being culturally intelligent at that moment. And I think it's something that everybody, every one of our educators, everybody that interacts with difference of any level should have. It's something I think we should engage with. We should fortify ourselves, we strengthen ourselves, and make a commitment to learn. It's shifting. When I mean it's shifting, you need to know how to adapt your style to basically support whether it be a student or groups of people that you interact with. For me, when people operate that way, whether it be as leaders or as teachers, as educators, they're acting and they're working in cultural intelligence.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Armstrong.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Sir, I was just wondering, do the Black coaches, do they play a supportive role with the de-streamed courses? For instance, the de-streamed math that's coming in this year and in future years. Do they play a role in supporting the students?
That's a great question. Thank you so much, Trustee Armstrong. I think that when you talk about playing a great role, I think everybody kind of plays a great role. I think they play a great role in different ways. It's happening at home through supporting their kids, and that's why I think it's very important that as a board, we are carrying the parents along in terms of what we are doing, that we make sure that they understand how important this streaming is, and not assume that they know. Like I said, there's a challenge facing the group of parents we have, especially those that come from those that are first generation, that do not understand the Canadian system. They do not even know, like when you talk about the streaming, they don't even understand what you're talking about. Some of them are even threatened coming to schools to engage, even threatened coming for the parents' association or the parents' council, because they do not know how to navigate the conversations. And so if we really want them to participate in some of these changes coming, whether it be the streaming, it shouldn't just be happening on the education front with the Black educators. It should be also, the Black parents should also be involved in the process. And that will come through active messaging and educating as you send, whether it be letters or correspondence back home with the students, let them be involved and let them know. It's a challenge, I must confess, trying to engage this group, because I feel that they have so much to give to our educational system, but it's something we have to do. And if we can do that, we will not only notice some of the suspension rates, the suspension rate, we keep talking about suspension rates of Black students, we'll see that drop because the parents will also be actively involved in some of the things they do. And I'm always careful to say, very, very careful to say this, that Black parents are not involved, because that's not true. I'm a Black parent and I'm very involved in the education of my children. Okay, you would say, but you are involved in the school board, that's why you're involved. No, that's not true. Even before school board, I was very involved. And sometimes we have that stereotype. But what I would just say is that we just owe them that commitment to just support them and make sure they are getting all the information. Not just Black parents, racialized parents, so many parents out there, we assume that they know and they are going along with what's happening, but they are actually not well informed or do not know what's happening.
Thank you, sir.
Trustee Simpson.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Well, Dr. O'Hara, first of all, your enthusiasm alone should help make your program successful. You are, very bubbling, and it's wonderful to hear from you. Something that you talked about was listening to student voices, listening to family voices. And then what I'm wondering is, could we meld those and bring them to the best practices that are used by the graduation coaches? The reason I ask this is I feel that often what we need to do is appeal to those upstream kids who are already in elementary school, rather than just being reactive as we need to be in assisting these kids to graduate. We also want to bring some of these best practices to some of the schools that don't have the benefit of having a graduation coach and having the benefit of being able to listen to student voices and family voices. So at the end of this journey, I guess here is my question, is are we going to be able to have some kind of a report or some kind of a reflection from your graduation coaches as to what they found worked best and what some of their students were saying and their families were saying?
Honestly, that is fantastic. Just such a lovely question. Thank you so much. Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we are planning to, and we've already started doing so. In fact, some of the things I just shared with you in terms of the quotes and the testimonials coming from the last grad coach were some of the things we captured. By our position, as a part of the requirement, we have to report back to the ministry, because they are funding this program, about how successful it is. We are keeping track of the students we are supporting, not just keeping a vague track. We are keeping track even up to their OEN number, to kind of track and know those we are actually supporting, so that we can report back to the ministry in a confidential way, so that they could also track and know that these programs are being successful. So yes, it's something we could definitely put together, because we are beginning to see certain good practices in terms of what we do. We are finding that students respond better with certain programs. The challenge that the program has faced, like most programs, is all the restrictions and the COVID, the pandemic. It's been a big damper, but I am so glad that we have such resilient grad coaches that have, regardless of the challenges, have continued to connect with students and continue to connect with families. So there's a whole lot of connection happening with the students and building of relationships. And there's also a whole lot of connection happening and building of relationships with families. So yes, it's happening, and we hope to capture some of this, and at some point we'll be sharing some of the good practices with the board.
Is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you very much, Dr. O'Hara, for your presentation. And as Trustee Simpson said, yes, you're very bubbly and involved and enthusiastic, and obviously very dedicated to your craft, and you're the topic of your craft. So thank you. So can I have a mover, please, for the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, everybody.
Okay. Trustee Armstrong, seconded by Trustee Simpson, that the memorandum from the Superintendent of Leading and Learning dated January 19th, 2022, entitled Graduation Coach Program for Black Students, be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item L2, memo from the Superintendent of Planning and Facilities, Hydro Ottawa request for easement at St. Pius High School. Superintendent Vala, welcome. Mr. Baxter, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. And through you, I'd like to introduce Mr. Ian Baxter, our Manager of Planning and Construction, who will present the easement request for Hydro Ottawa at St. Pius High School. Ian?
Your microphone's not on, Mr. Baxter. Still not on. Still not on. I can't hear you, Mr. Baxter.
Mr. Chair, could we go to another item and then come back to him?
That's what my suggestion was going to be as well. Unless Mr. Bell, Mr. Baxter?
I
There we go.
apologize. Thank you, Superintendent Valla, and good evening, everyone. I just had some microphone issues. And
I know what that's like.
They are now solved. Through you, Mr. Chair, trustees have in front of them this evening a memo regarding the approval of an easement on the St. Pius X High School site. As a public body, from time to time, the board is presented with requests from utilities and agencies for the consideration of easements on our property. This easement has been requested as part of a plan for the relocation of the hydro lines located on the east side of Fisher Avenue between Meadowlands Drive and Dines Road. The proposal consists of a 2-by-8 meter easement for the installation of a support anchor for a pole to be located at the southeast corner of Fisher Avenue and Dines Road. Locating the infrastructure in this part of the property would not negatively impact either the operation of the school or the functionality of the site. The relocation of the hydro line would bring it into alignment with a row of mature trees in front of the school. And Hydro Ottawa has assured us that they will do their best to ensure that the trees are not impacted, but regular trimming would likely now be required. Hydro Ottawa will monetarily compensate the board for the easement, and that compensation would be based on the size of the easement and a valuation equal to 50% of fair market value. All fees associated with the transaction would be paid by Hydro Ottawa, and Hydro Ottawa has indicated that its current schedule for this work is during the spring of this year. Although again, we know from experience that, that those timelines can be somewhat fluid. And I think with that, staff are here to answer any questions trustees may have regarding both the request and also the memo.
Thank you, Mr. Baxter. Questions or comments? Pretty self-explanatory. A mover and a seconder, please. Would someone like to move the motion? Trustee Whitted. Seconder. Trustee Coburn. That the memorandum from the Superintendent of Planning and Facilities dated January 19, 2022, entitled Hydro Ottawa Request for Easement at St. Pius High School be received, and the board approves the easement in favor of Hydro Ottawa. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you and good evening.
Item L3, memo from the Superintendent of Student Success, Intermediate, Secondary, Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program Overview. Welcome, Superintendent Kelly and Mr. Francoeur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program, or OYAP, is a high school initiative that encourages student involvement in the skilled trades. OYAP allows students to test drive apprenticeship-based careers beginning in grade 11 through our cooperative education programs. Our board supports the further development of the OYAP initiative in our schools through staff training, awareness, specialty program funding, and the purchasing of trades-related equipment. Mario Francoeur, our consultant for OYAP Intermediate Secondary, will provide further information on the apprenticeship program in our board, and Deb Lawler, our coordinator in student success, is with us to provide any support with questions. And I would invite Mr. Francoeur at this time to begin his presentation.
Thank you, Superintendent Kelly. Thank you, everyone, for giving me this opportunity to present about the OYAP program. The government of Ontario has recognized there is a tremendous need for skilled trades people, and they've now provided more funds to increase the number of students participating in the OYAP program. The OYAP program is available to students in grade 11, 12 through the co-op educational program. Students who have completed 14 credits in 15 years of age can join and have full-time in high school can join the OYAP program. The financial incentive is up to $400 for students. So to join the program, that means they'll get about $100 for their steel-toe boots or other type of safety equipment, and $300 or up to $300 for the transportation. They have a choice of about over 150 careers to choose from. The OYAP program is divided into, Ms. Lawler, can you go to the next slide, please? The OEAP program involves two sections, the participant and the register. The participant is to try a trade. Usually it's done in grade 11, and the students just want to explore trade and see how it is. If they are really interested, they can join again in grade 12 and do a registered OEAP. And at that point, they'll become apprentice, and the hours that they will get toward the apprenticeship during the apprentice will count toward their apprenticeship hours to become a certified tradesperson. We also have the opportunity to do the level 1. It's offered at Algonquin College right now, and we have also a partnership with La Cité Collégiale, where students do the in-class portion of their trades. At that point, we have 5. At this time, we have 5 seats in the automotive at Algonquin College and 5 in electrical as well. The next session is in February for automotive. We have 5 students who are going to be joining. The hours that they do during that time will be counting as well toward their apprenticeship, and the hands-on experience as well will count toward their certificate. So they'll do the level 1, and then once they graduate from high school, they will be able to continue with level 2 and the level 3. All the materials is paid for, and it's free for the students. So everything they need is provided. At the OCSB, we've tried to promote the skilled trades. Last year, we purchased CNC machines for all the schools that did not have CNC machines. So now all the high schools have a Tormac machine the students can work on. We provided kidder kits to all the science, grade 7, 8 science teachers. And we've also started a new initiative, the tool library, where teachers can share tools among high schools. So for example, if a school needs a cement mixer for a project, instead of buying a cement mixer and leave it in the corner, not being used for the rest of the year, those tools will be able to be shared. We have a location right now that's going to be at Sacred Heart High School, and the teacher there will be, there's a teacher who will take care of the library. We also have a virtual career fair that we've launched, a career week, and also STEAM week that is coming soon. We have 8 skilled trades executive booths, multiple workshops around the skilled trades. We have grade 5 and 8 skilled trades career panel, and in May, we have students going to Toronto, if pandemic permits, to go to skills competition. And this year we have students also going grade from 5 to 8 will be doing virtual competition. We started the French OEA co-op program, and at that point we'll have some students who will be able to go to OEAP at La Cité Collégiale. Thank you. Mr. Next slide, please. Ben and Sarah, I want to thank them for their participation in the OEAP construction project selection. So they were part of the committee. And what we have done, we asked the ministry for 3 special grants for promoting the skilled trades to women, to Indigenous students, and community outreach. We've combined the 3 grants together, and we offered the school the opportunity to bid for a project that will involve the entire school community. And at the beginning of the year, I went to all the schools, met with all teachers in tech departments and co-op teachers as well, explained the projects and told them how to apply. And we had 3 schools who submitted 4 projects, and we went to all these projects, and St. X was the winner of the funding. So they'll be building an outdoor classroom with partnership with Algonquin College. The next year's project will be done in May, so the school will be able to bid for next year's project. Next slide, please. One of the big things that I'm working on, and we're working in the department, is to remove the stigma with the trades. And there's this idea that the trade is for people who have not a good education or are not good in schools, or that it's not a good job, it doesn't provide a lot of money, and so on, which is far from the truth. Skilled trades now requires a lot of technical knowledge, new technologies, and pays very well. It's recession-proof in lots of those trades. As we saw during the pandemic, the people who kept working were the skilled trades people. So we need to work really hard to remove those stigma. There's a lot of good careers in the trades. It's just a question of reaching the people, the parents, the community, and the students as well to present them with the opportunity. Next slide, please. This is just a little poster over here to show a little bit. It's a few years old, but still demonstrate the possibility. And we're not saying that it's not good to go to university or colleges, but we just want to show that there's another path as well, that the trades path is a very good one. And people who go into apprentice are usually paid during their apprenticeship hours. They are debt-free at the end, and they are 100% chance of getting a job because they are usually hired by an employer who will keep them after because they've been trained by them and they know the employee very well. So there's a lot of benefits in joining OYAP and joining the skilled trades. In 2018-2019, we have 483 students who were in OYAP. Of those, 13 were registered who had a training agreement with the Ministry of Labor to earn apprentice hours. And this year, we are going to reach 400 students, even with the pandemic, who will be in OYAP, which is our goal. But the number of registered training agreement is now at 13, and I'm expecting them to double to about 26 by the end of the year, which will be one of the highest number we've had. So I'm very pleased with that, and I think we're going to continue working to promote the trades as a very valuable career. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mario. Questions or comments from the trustees? Trustee Coburn.
Thank you for the presentation. Mario, you mentioned the stigma that's associated with the trades. As somebody who went to school 100 years ago, and that stigma, I think, existed then, it surprises me to hear that that stigma is still there. And if you pick up a paper, you look at any sort of labor shortage, the trades are just, we're in desperate needs of trades. So why do you think that stigma is still there, and do you think it's diminishing in any way, shape, or form?
Through you, Mr. Chair. It is surprising to me as well that the stigma is still there. It's how many times I've walked around and hear people saying that, looking at someone working in the trade and say, you know what, look at their son or their daughter and say, this is why you need to go to school. And this is very unfortunate because those careers are very, very good careers and can be very rewarding. And it's interesting, I've been to many provincial meetings, and one of the first thing that is discussed and how do we remove the stigma, and it's been like this for a very long time. So it's not a simple, there's no simple solution, but really I think it starts with each one of us doing our best to show the benefits of joining the trades. And I think the pandemic has shown that, you know what, if we're trying to get a mechanic right now or someone to come and do work at a house, we realize the importance of having a skilled trades person.
Thank you.
Trustee Ward.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. As we're going to have many different careers, the students today as they grow up, do you also show the parents a pathway where a bricklayer may not be able to lay bricks until they're 80 or 60 or 45? What's next? Because it is in some ways it is a step. They take in so much knowledge.
To you, Mr. Chair. This is a very good point, but many of those skilled trades people turn out to later on start their own business or will move up the ladder as well, become foremen and into administration as well. So there's a lot of opportunity to advance in the skilled trades. And we always think of people in the skilled trades like working with a hammer and nails, but it really is much bigger than that. And especially with the technology today, there's a lot of opportunities.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments? I'll give a comment. I've worked for a utility for 40 years, and I'm on construction sites weekly, if not every other day. And I can attest that the skills are transportable from job to job. As you said, when you get older, you can become the foreman or the supervisor or the teacher and pass your skills on to the younger people. And these skills aren't limited to one job or one company. That they, as I said, they are transportable to companies. Their provincial licensing allows interprovincial licenses, and that you can travel across Canada or worldwide with Red Sealed certification. It's it's not the way it used to be. And it's to quote Trustee Coburn, the stigma is no longer there that the trades are very well paid and can dictate their own hours, or as you said, go on and open their own businesses so they work for themselves. So I'm a very, very good supporter of the trades, and we need to do more about apprenticeship and more about getting kids involved at an earlier age. I took industrial arts at St. Mark's when I was in grade 7 and 8, and that opened a point of view working with metal, working with wood, working with electricity that I carried through my adult life, and it got me interested in working with my hands. So it's, you know what, I think we need to do more of it rather than less of it, and we need to help those students that are interested any way we can. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have a mover, please? Trustee Coburn, Trustee Whitted. That the memorandum from the Superintendent of Student Success Intermediate Secondary dated January 19, 2022, entitled Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Programs Overview be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item L4, memo from the Superintendent of Finance Administration, read interim financial report for the 3 months ended November 30th, 2021. Superintendent Shimmons and Ms. Donnelly, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm pleased to be joined tonight by Shelley Donnelly, who is our recently appointed Manager of Finance, replacing the retiring Gail Carosi, who's just actually retiring the end of this month. So she will join to present the interim financial report for the first quarter of the year. You may notice that the report, I'll just reference just quickly the change in the appearance of the report. So that appearance aligns with our budget document, but it also has a couple of new additions that help to provide some more relevant information for monitoring. The first of those is the enrollments. So enrollment drives our GSN funding, or GSN revenues, to the tune of about 97%. Therefore, it's important to keep an eye on that to monitor the impact of the enrollment changes on the budget. And the second addition is another column for budget reporting. So the report will include the original budget that stays static, that was approved by the board in June. And then each of the quarterly reports will report the revised or ongoing budget changes that occur after the budget is approved. So an example of this might be PPF grants that are approved following the budget, or received following the budget. So we would reflect that in the revised budget column. Moving to page 3 of your report, you will see the new enrollment graph. And really that's just a visual that shows our enrollment changes in the teal from the original budget, and in the wine colored columns is the revised. You'll notice that our enrollment has dropped significantly from when we originally set our budget, and at the current time is trending to be down approximately over 734 students from JK to 12. So that includes the adult. It's important to note that this is not our final enrollment projection for the current year. We're just finalizing our reports to the ministry for the October 31st count, because those are due on January 31st, the end of this week. So once we have those final numbers, we will be able to determine better what the true impact of the enrollment is on the current year budget revenues. Moving to page 4. Page 4 is the overall summary of the details of the revenue, the expenditures, and then the final line, the surplus and deficit. And you'll notice in there the original budget column, which does tie to our original budget document. And then the second column is the revised budget. So that would be the revisions that were submitted to the ministry for their due date mid-December, and includes the changes in enrollment, but it also includes approximately $4.5 million, the second half of the COVID funding that was announced by the ministry, very close to the December filing deadline for the revised estimate. So we filed in December, continued to file a balanced budget without the use of accumulated surplus reserves. You'll also see at the very bottom right-hand corner of that summary page that we're trending comparable to what we were last year at this time. So last year at this time, we had a net total expenditure of 26.4% spent, and the current year we're slightly less at 24.8% spent. So we're trending where we are expected to trend, and I will give a little bit more explanation to that. So the timing of expenditures and the addition of significant COVID grants during the last 2 years has made revenues and expenditures very, very variable. And as such, the budget has been very fluid. It's becoming quite an exercise to analyze the comparisons from year to year due to the impact of the timing of these changes related to the period of lockdown and the move between remote learning and in-person learning. So each of the lines that we're analyzing, we're trying to determine were we in person, were we not in person at that particular time, and what's the impact on the analysis on that line. Generally, we can see that there is a change in how staff is allocated and spent, because last year we had a significant addition to staffing to support the quick change to the virtual academy. So that affected lines between the classroom teacher line, the library and guidance teacher line, as well as the resource teacher line, that we're not seeing those same changes this year. And it changed the overall allocation because last year we had an enrollment in that virtual academy of 11,800 students. And this year we're down to about 2,500. So that does shift the expenses between those lines that I just mentioned related to teachers. Second item that we're generally seeing is the lack of a replacement staff is showing some savings in some budgets, while that's being offset by some increases in isolation costs that is increasing some of the replacement savings. Similarly, we did experience a savings in the Oxta budget. Unfortunately, that was related to the lack of bus drivers and therefore not having buses on the road. However, the revised estimates does include approximately $1.5 million of savings in that particular transportation line. Overall, the budget reflects the reduction of nearly 700 fewer students at October 31st. So that generates a revenue reduction in our grants of about $7 million. Obviously offset by that $4.5 million COVID grants that we did receive, the second 50%. And last but not least, when you're seeing some of these classroom supply lines, particularly the computer lines, you'll see some timing changes on the variances of those lines, because last year we did put a lot of money into we actually purchased double the Chromebooks. So there was a significant upfront purchase, and that has slowed down somewhat this year. So you'll see that this year the trending is a different percentage. Overall, our trending is well aligned to where we're expecting to trend and is on target. So that is the overall operating fund of the board, the status to date. And I will turn it over to Ms. Donnelly now, who will speak to the capital schedule activities. And that's further down your report on page 12. So Mrs. Donnelly.
Thank you, Lisa. So I will go over some highlights on the statement of capital activities. So new on this statement, as Lisa mentioned earlier, you'll notice that there's a revised budget column, which was filed with the Ministry of Education in December. The revised budget reflects an increase of $11.2 million from the original approved budget. And this includes the use of EDC reserves to support the purchase of new sites, as well as a revised estimate for capital priority spending to reflect a more realistic timing of expenditures on our 2 new elementary schools. You'll also notice there's an increase to the COVID-19 resilience infrastructure stream projects, and this reflects a timing difference due to delays in summer projects from prior year, which have now moved into the current year. However, overall, the COVID-19 resilience plan spending remains the same at 13.9 million over the 2 school years.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Donnelly. So, Mr. Chair, we would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments? Trustee Coburn.
No questions. Just want to compliment Lisa and Shelley and the finance team on the presentation. Pictures speak many words sometimes, so the graphs are a nice addition, but it's very clear and concise to go through. So just want to compliment you on that.
Is there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, can I have a mover, please? Trustee Coburn, the seconder. Trustee Simpson. But the memorandum from the Superintendent of Finance Administration dated January 19, 2022, entitled Interim Financial Reports for the 3 months ended November 30th, 2021, be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, ladies, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Item 5, memo from the Director of Education, revised strategic plan for 2022 to 2025. Director D'Amico, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You'll see in the memo that this is a follow-up to the update that trustees received in November. The direction that staff received from trustees last year was to revise the board's strategic plan while keeping the Be Well, Be Community, and Be Innovative strategic commitments. And for the purpose of this presentation, I'll quickly highlight a few slides, and I'll spend the majority of the time highlighting the key changes to the strategic commitment goals. In order to avoid wordsmithing, if trustees have any specific language suggestions that they would like to be considered, they can certainly email those to me, and I'll review those with the communications department. I do want to recognize Trustee Sandra Moore, Trustee Sister Shelley Lawrence, and Trustee John Curry, who provided some input on the guidance of language after we received input from the various stakeholders. And I hope, the hope for today is that trustees will approve this plan, and then our talented communication staff will start to develop banners and other communication platforms to share the revisions to the strategic commitments. You will see the time frame for this plan is 2022 to 2025. And in terms of background, the slide shows the process that was used to collect input on the revisions. This process was the recommendation that came from trustees following the 2021 trustee exec planning session. You'll note on this slide that the mission and the vision and tagline that came out of the 2018 strategic planning consultation, the direction for this year's update was to focus on the goals and strategic commitments. I do want to note, however, that we have added the Catholic, as a Catholic school board, we wanted to incorporate both our deep learning framework, but also the link to the Catholic graduate expectations. And they, as you know, were developed by the Institute of Catholic Education, or ICE, in consultation with the Ontario Catholic Education community. So everything we do is also informed by the Catholic graduation expectations. So Be Community, what's changed? We added the word inclusion right in the definitions to make sure that we captured all students. We added the words faith-based Catholic social teachings to signal our Catholic distinctiveness. And you'll see learning partnerships. That's to reflect the impact the community has on all that we're doing in our schools and to show their involvement. Examples of learning partnerships could be elders, mentors, equity-seeking groups. It's also the language of deep learning that refers to our support from parents and students. And as we know through our school, a lot of connections in learning partnerships with local businesses and organizations. The goals have increased from 2 goals to 3 goals. The first goal that you'll see changed is to reflect our new spiritual theme. The second new goal is a focus on truth and reconciliation and the calls to action. And this is to address the inequities faced by Indigenous students and communities. This was important feedback from our elders who certainly asked for more time to be part of this consultation process. And they indicated that they are aware and taking part in the board action plan where this goal will be reflected. And the third goal is, third new goal This was specifically focusing on equity-seeking groups. This was the #1 area of feedback that we received from our students. They wanted to see a specific mention in the board goals to Black students and to SLGBTQ+, while also still highlighting the needs to have strategies to support other marginalized groups. And you heard some of the strategies today in a previous presentation. Be Well. So a lot of the feedback that came in about the Be Well really was not linked to strategic plan or to our strategic plan. It was more on the awareness that it has been very difficult for staff and students to truly be well during the pandemic, and that's certainly not surprising. The feedback was there was a need for us to continue to support strategies that support both staff and student wellness, especially during the pandemic. Now the goals, in the first goal, the feedback we received was to expand well-being to include a clear definition or a clear inclusion of mental health, physical, social, emotional, and spiritual well-being. So that now has been added to that first goal. The second goal feedback was to make sure that it was clear that the strategies for building capacity needed to focus on both staff and students. The well-being is not about staff just looking after the interest of students. Students have a role to play in looking after the interests of one another, and there's a reciprocal relationship where they also support the well-being of our staff. So that's what's reflected in that goal. And the third goal is a new one as well. That's our focus on inclusion. And the message here with the language that was selected was that everyone is welcome in their school. And that allows our actual board improvement plan and equity plan to focus on all the different areas that we can't mention in a short strategic document. Be innovative. There was very little change to the definition other than we're looking at fostering innovation to create deep learning so that all can recognize their potential. So it's being innovative so you actually create deep learning opportunities for your students and for fellow educators. In the goal section, the first goal was to focus on both staff and students and to transform teaching and learning using deep learning. The second one, again, flows from the presentation you heard earlier today. We need to implement differentiated instruction with culturally responsive practices. And we expanded that to say that will develop all of the global competencies. So we're looking at how that can create conditions for the 6 C's or the 6 global competencies. And a new goal that came out in feedback, and this I think largely was reflective of some of the challenges people saw during the pandemic and the amount of time that was being used for screen time. So the new goal is getting at the humane use of technology. So using tech for good and also using the balanced use of tech. So that goal, although it's talking about humane use of tech, it could also indicate time to put the tech down and be outdoors. And we heard today through the OEAP presentation about development of outdoor classrooms. So this information on the second to last slide about monitoring progress, this was brought to the trustees in a different format in November. And this is where we move from the macro goals of strategic planning to the micro strategies of measurement, tracking, and reporting through all of the various plans that come to you throughout the year. So as noted in November, the board improvement and equity plan will be based on a new framework that the ministry is developing, and we anticipate receiving the revised versions in May of this year. As we start to collect student census data, and our goal is by the end of this year, that's what we're hoping for, then we will be able to adjust the goals in the board improvement equity plan so that our strategies are targeted. So the ability to report on progress for specific groups of students. And I would like to thank you at this point. I'd be pleased to answer any questions you have regarding the revisions to the strategic plan and the commitments and the process that was followed this year.
Thank you very much, Mr. D'Amico. Questions or comments? Trustee Armstrong.
Through you, Mr. Chair. 2 questions. One is just a clarification question. If this is a motion for debate on 2 items, one is the dog's taking me off my thought track, but is this a motion for debate with our revised strategic plan? And secondly, that we are allowing communications to develop a communications outreach. Those two items, are they up for debate with this motion? That's my first question.
Mr. Domingo?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I wasn't sure if that question was directed to you or to the chair in terms of the presentation and the motion that's on the table.
Sorry, I got some background noise here, as you can hear.
I can repeat it again. I know the dog is throwing us off a bit. Would you like me to repeat my question, Chair?
Yes, please.
This is a motion. It's a confirmation. This is a motion that we are voting on a revised strategic plan, number one, and that we are allowing communications to create a communication plan without us seeing it and then distributing it. Am I getting that right?
So through you, Mr. Chair, the motion before you is to receive the updated strategic plan as we were directed to create by the trustees. The trustee is correct that you would also be approving that the communications department take the information that was presented and they will brand it, they will create banners. It has never been a practice of the board that we bring banners and posters back to the trustees for approval. That's an operational matter in my opinion, but certainly the trustees can decide if they're not pleased with the revisions to the strategic plan that we've received from stakeholders across the board. They could choose not to pass this protocol this strategic plan and request that we redo the strategic plan and discount the feedback we've received from our community.
So we are voting on two items today. One is this strategic revised plan, and two, whether we will allow communications to create communications documents that we haven't seen and then distribute them. Those are the two things we're voting on, just to confirm.
I think on the second item, we're giving the communications department the go-ahead to go ahead and produce documents from the revised strategic plan, which is an operational issue as of any other strategic plan that we've passed over the last 25 years.
Okay, so that's my first question, just confirming what we're doing.
Is your second
question, Mr.
Is
Chair?
your second question supplemental to the first, or is it different than
the first was just confirming the motion. The second is related to the motion.
Go ahead.
My question is very straightforward. Will Jesus be at the center of the branded communication of the strategic plan 2022-2025 created and distributed by the communications department?
Through you, Mr. Chair, included in our strategic plans, and if you refer to last year, the one-page highlight, when we put that in our schools, we include in there our board spiritual theme. So the answer to the trustee's question is yes.
Thank you.
Trustee Simpson, then Coburn.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to vote in favor of this motion in that having been involved with many strategic planning processes in the past, I don't think that I've rarely seen a strategic plan that is so clearly laid out. I have to say I'm extremely proud of this document. Something that's important with the strategic plan is that you don't receive it and put it on your bookshelf. What is important is that everyone in your community is able to articulate it, right from your director of education to your trustees, to your teachers, to your students, all knowing together which way the ship is moving. And I think that this strategic plan outlines this beautifully. We have no doubt about what our strategic pillars are and what our goals are. So I'm so proud, and I want to congratulate everyone who was involved in developing this. I think it's right on, and it just speaks to the heart of what we're all trying to accomplish here. So congratulations.
Thank you. Trustee Coburn, then Trustee Moore.
Yeah, Cindy stole a little bit of my thunder, so I'd like to compliment Tom and his team for presenting a clear, concise strategic plan, and I certainly support that. And the second part of the motion with regards to the communication piece, I support that as well. As you enunciated, it's an operational issue, and I'm quite comfortable with them preparing that and distributing that.
Thank you. Trustee Moore.
Thank you,
Trustee
Mr.
Moore.
Chair. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I want to compliment the director and staff for listening to the community. That's totally be community. And for the first item to be our spiritual theme, which the community has taken up and they have done wonders with. They amaze me every time I go on Twitter and we see gratitude. Just how great. Thank you for listening. Just my compliments. And I will be supporting the motions.
Thank you. Trustee Lawrence.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Sandra stole my thunder. But I also want to add, especially the thing on Twitter too, but when we get into the school improvement plans, people latch on to this. Having been an employee of the board and gone through many strategic plans, it is something that all departments and students get and parents get involved in. And I have found with this strategic plan and with the three, be community, be well, and be innovative, the board, the people, all of, not just Board of Trustees, but have really used that almost daily in their lives. So thank you. It's excellent. I will definitely be voting for it.
Trustee Witt.
Thank you, Chair. I too will add my voice in support. I do want to thank the director and his team, as well as all of my colleagues. We did have several opportunities to provide input to the refresh of the strategic plan, including during an update that was provided to the board on November 3rd as per the memo. I want to thank Tom and the entire group of senior administration folks who have kept equity, diversity, inclusion sort of at the heart and soul of this document. It is really served us well since its creation, and I'm pleased to see that we're continuing down a very similar path. Fully trust that our communications and our communications and design and promotion folks within the board will do what they do best and create a campaign and some buzz around this that will resonate with students, parents, and all the stakeholders in our community. So thanks again.
Trustee McEwen, you're the only one who hasn't spoken. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I also would like to thank Director D'Amico, administration, my fellow trustees, and the extensive consultation that went through to bring this strategic plan to where it is today. And we really couldn't have thought of anything, I think, better than to be well, be community, and be innovative in a middle of a pandemic, or hopefully at the end of a pandemic. I shouldn't say the middle. So thank you. And yes, I will totally support the recommendation and that communications do their work.
So it's my job as chair to thank the director for the work, but everybody else has done that before me. Trustee Armstrong, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I have a bit better. Could we name Jesus in the revised strategic plan?
Trustee D'Amico, Director D'Amico.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that will be up for the trustees if you wish us to change anything that I've presented. I'm bringing forward what's come forward from the community. The suggestion from the trustee, we believe, is captured under our goal about faith-filled and our Catholic social teachings, as well as the Catholic graduate expectation. So I'm not looking to change the language that we've received from ICE, but
I just, Director D'Amico didn't see the word Jesus in your strategic plan, and that bothers me.
Thank you for your comments. Trustee Coburn.
I support the document as presented, and again, we'll support our communication staff distributing the document.
Thank you. Trustee Woodard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support it as is, and I say that because Trustee McEwen eloquently spoke about all of the various stakeholders that were consulted, and a key stakeholder that was at the center of this was our religious education department. I fully trust and support the work that they've been doing to support our students and staff through their spiritual journey in our schools, and I certainly take direction and the cues from experts in religious education as to how it should be stylized and marketed to staff and students in our board. So I'm comfortable with the document as written, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, could I hear from Father Sanders on this?
No, you don't direct anybody.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Trustee Coburn.
Yeah, could I have Trustee Armstrong direct his questions through the chair, please?
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, could I hear from Father Sanders on this?
I think that the necessity of mentioning Jesus, that is implied directly by the student expectations, by the gospel values. The whole orientation is towards a Catholic and a Christian perspective. So I personally don't see any need for mentioning explicitly Jesus. It's a precondition actually for everything that has been said.
The idea of this is, thank you, Father. We weren't going to get into a wordsmithing exercise here. We're approving the concept and the content. Trustee Woodard.
I'd like to call the question, Mr. Chair, and recorded vote, please.
Thank you. Mr. Director, can you call the recorded vote?
Yes, I will.
Let me read the motion at first. I'll read the motion. That the memorandum from the Director of Education dated January 19, 2022, entitled Revised Strategic Plan 2022 to 2025 be received, and that the Board of Trustees approve the creation and distribution of the branded communications of the Strategic Plan 2022 to 2025 by the Communications Department. Mr. Director.
I'll be calling trustees' names as they appear on my screen. Trustee Coburn.
In favor.
Trustee Moore.
In favor.
Trustee Armstrong.
Can't hear you.
Sorry, Trustee Armstrong, we couldn't hear it.
Your microphone is off. Please turn it on.
That's good.
Not in favor.
Trustee Simpson.
In favor.
Trustee Whittet.
In favor.
Trustee Lawrence.
In favor.
Trustee McEwen.
In favor.
And Chair Mullen.
In favor, and let the record show that Trustee Curry and Trustee Warren are absent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The vote is 7-1 and passes. In all the excitement, who moved the motion? Trustee Lawrence?
Mr. Chair, I didn't, but I'm willing to. I mean, was it originally moved? I don't know.
And Trustee Whittick seconded because you called the recorded vote?
I did, yeah.
I think the dog kind of got us a little off topic.
Item M, new business. There's none. Notice of motions, there's none. Confirmation of the action report of January 11, 2021. Can I have a mover, please? Trustee Simpson, Trustee McEwen. The action report covering the period of January 11th, 2022 be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Inquiries? None. Administrative announcements. Director D'Amico?
None, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Can I have a mover to adjourn at 8:49, please? Trustee Coburn, Trustee Woodett. That the regular board meeting of January 25th, 2022 be adjourned at 8:49 p.m. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone.
Good night.